Hello everyone, welcome to lesson 8-1, solving equations with rational coefficients. In this lesson, we will practice using property of equalities. Specifically, you will solve equations using the division property of equality and solve equations by using the multiplication property of equality. Let's look at the key concepts for this lesson. So an equation is a mathematical sentence stating that two expressions are equal. If 72 teens in a survey say they have social network profile and these teens are 3/4 of the teens surveyed, then the equation would be 3/4 of a sample is 72. So 3/4 of the number that was surveyed is 72. And this can be used to find the total number of teens surveyed. A value for the variable that makes an equation true is called a solution. So when we find the value of this variable and it makes this statement true by saying 3/4 of this specific number is 72, that's called our solution. The solution is 96. Since 3/4 of 96 is 72, it is true. It is a true statement. Okay, let's take a look here at the key concepts. In order to solve these equations, we have to use properties of equality, and there is multiplication property of equality and division property of equality. For example, in this question that we saw up here, we would have had to use division property of equality because we have to use the opposite operation that is being used there. So you see, between this coefficient, 3/4, and the variable x, we have the operation multiplication. You always have to use the opposite in order to get rid of the coefficient and isolate the variable. And whatever you do to one side of the equation, you must do to the other side of the equation. So let's read about that. Multiplication property of equality. If you multiply each side of an equation by the same non-zero number, the two sides remain equal. So it's saying that whatever you do to one side, you must do to the other side in order for the equation to remain, to be true. For any numbers A, B, and C, if A equals B, then CA equals CB. You see that? Whatever you add to one side, you must add to the other. Division property of equality. If you divide each side by an equation by the same non-zero number, the two sides remain equal. And you can see that as well. So A, B, and C, where C cannot equal 0, if A equals B, then A divided by C equals B divided by C. It'll be the same. Okay. And last note, you can use the above properties and inverse operations to solve an equation. Inverse operations meaning undo each other. To undo the multiplication of 3/4 in 3/4 x equals 72, you can apply the division property of equality to divide each side of the equation by 3/4. Applying the above properties creates equivalent equations, which are equations that have the same solution. So what they're saying is, if I have 3/4 x equals 72, I need to apply division property of equality. As I mentioned before, I'm multiplying here. So I have to do the opposite. And the second step in dividing fraction is using the multiplicative inverse. So it would be 4/3. If you don't know what I mean by that, we will practice it. But when you are dividing fractions, if I divide 3/4 divided by 3/4 to get rid of this 3/4, the second step in that process of dividing, I would have to replace the division sign with multiplication and flip the second fraction. That's called a multiplicative inverse. So really what I've done here is I'm trying to divide this coefficient out, but I've jumped to the second step by writing the multiplicative inverse. And whatever you do to one side, you must do to the other side. So, and to make it easy, I will make this over 1. Okay, and now we can go ahead and solve. These will undo each other as they mentioned here. 3 will cross-reference with 3, and 4 will cross-reference with 4. all becoming ones, right? And then 1 times 1 is 1, and 1 divided by 1 is 1, and 1 times x is 1x. So our x remains, and that's all that remains. And then on this side, we can cross-reference as well. We cross-reference the 4 and 1, and that's simplified already. Cross-reference the 3 and the 72, and we get 24. 24 here, and 1 here. And now we multiply straight across. 24 times 4 equals 96. And they told us that was our answer earlier, remember? So 3/4 of a number is 72. That number is 96. Okay, so let's practice that with example 1, or at least let's analyze it, and then we will practice. You see we have 4.2 x equals negative 52.5, right? What that means is we're saying that 4.2 of a number, okay, is equal to negative 52.5. This is known as a rational coefficient. A rational number is a number that can be expressed as a decimal, a fraction, a mixed number, positive or negative. So this is a rational coefficient because it's a whole number with a decimal, right? So we're going to go ahead now, and we see that we have multiplication, so I need to use division property of equality, which is the opposite. I divide both sides by 4.2. Notice that it didn't change to a negative. And then we get, when I divide this side by 4.2, divided by 4.2, I get 1. But 1 times x is simply x. So this 1 in front of the variable is unnecessary. You don't have to write that. Just simply write the x. And then we have negative 52.5 divided by 4.2, and we get negative, because a negative divided by positive is negative 12.5. So x is 12.5. So 4.2 times negative 12.5 is going to give you negative 52.5. And you can see that by replacing the variable in, and that is your solution. Okay, now this is a must do. This is what you have to do after each video or during each video. Let's do questions 1A to 1D. Please pause the video, try it on your own, and then play the video to see how I did it. Okay, I hope you paused the video and you are ready to check your answer. Here is question 1A. We see that we have 19x, negative 19.6 equals 5.6x. Over here, we are multiplying 5.6 times x. Because we're multiplying, we need to use the opposite operation, which is division, and we have to apply division property of equality, which means we have to, whatever we do to one side, we must do to the other side. So in order to isolate x, I need to divide by 5.6, and on this side, I also must divide by 5.6. Please use a calculator to facilitate, because I am not assessing whether you can divide or multiply. I'm assessing whether you are able to follow these steps, the proper steps, and apply division property of equality and multiplication property of equality properly. So I have negative 19.6 divided by positive 5.6 is going to give us a negative, because negative divided by positive is negative, and I get negative 3.5. Okay, let's try 1B. Okay, question B. Sorry it's so messy, but we have negative 20.9y equals negative 250.8. So again, let's use division property of equality because we are multiplying. So we have to use the opposite, and I'm going to divide both sides by negative 20.9 to isolate our y. Okay, and this is also going to be divided by negative 20.9. Notice this sign did not change. The value of the number remains as negative. And that leaves me with a y on this side, because negative 20.9 divided by negative 20.9 is positive 1, and positive 1 times y is y. Y equals 12. Remember, negative divided by negative is positive. Okay, 1C. Negative 13.6a equals 217.6. We are multiplying here. The coefficient is being multiplied into the variable, so we have to use division property of equality, and we will divide both sides by 13.6 in order to isolate the variable. Negative 13.6, and we get a on this side equals negative 16. Right? A positive divided by a negative is a negative. And we have 1D, 323.4 equals negative 13.2Z. Let's divide both sides by negative 13.2 in order to isolate our Z. And there we have it. And remember that negative 13.2 divided by negative 13.2 is positive 1, and 1 times Z is simply Z, so we're just going to keep that. So these guys are gone. And that equals a positive divided by a negative is going to be a negative number. It's 24.5. I hope you found those examples easy. Now let's take that skill and apply it to a real-world context. A drive-through safari zoo charges $12.50 per person for admission. In 1 hour, the park raised $675 in admission fees. Write and solve an equation to find how many people visited that hour. So $12.50 per person. We don't know how many people we have, but it brought it all the way up to 675 after X amount of people. So it's going to be 1250 times X equals 675. And you can see that here. Okay, 1250 times, now they're using V for visitors, right? But you can use any letter you want when you're using variables. So we have our coefficient is 12.5, which is $12.50 times or per visitor equals 675. Divide both sides by the coefficient in order to isolate the variable, and we get V equals 54. So therefore, there were 54 visitors. Notice we use division property of equality. So the zoo admitted 54 people in 1 hour. Okay, here we have another real-world context, word problem. Let's read it together, and then you will pause and try to do it on your own. A 1 year in state camping permit, okay, so for 1 year within the state, camping permit for New Mexico state parks costs $180. If the total income from the camping permits is $8,280 during the first day of sales, write and solve an equation to find how many permits were purchased. So essentially the same thing. It's the same scenario where something is being paid per person and then we reach a total product. So I would write, for example, $880 per permit, so we can use P equals $8,280. Okay, go ahead, pause the video and solve. I hope you paused the video and you use division property of equality. So you divided both sides by 180, right? And this 180 is gone there. And we are left with P equals 46. Therefore, 46 permits were sold the first day. Okay, remember that we must answer word problems with words. And now for the second part of our lesson, here's another key concept. Solve equations by multiplying. Equations in which a variable is divided can be solved by multiplying each side by the same number. This method is also useful when the coefficient of a variable is a fraction. So here's our first example. Let's just comb through it. We have a quarter of y equals -8. So I can tell you already that it's going to be -32, right? Because it's a quarter of a number, it's -8. And if this is a quarter, that means this must be quadruple or multiplied by 4 in order to know what that number is, because it's only one of 4. So it's written like this. And if we want to get rid of this, if we want to get rid of the denominator, right, we multiply both sides by 4. Or we're multiplying both sides by the multiplicative inverse, because this 4 is 4 over 1, right? So we multiply both sides, and we get 1y, or simply 1y right here, equals -32, right? And here it is, again, where both sides are fractions. We want to isolate the x. Let me zoom in a little bit for you. We want to isolate the x, so we're going to multiply both sides by the multiplicative inverse. So that would be -5 over 3 on both sides, and it has to be negative. So when we multiply -5 over 3 on both sides, they cancel each other out, so we're just left with 1x. And on this side, we're multiplying it with this side. Remember to cross-reference. So if we were to cross-reference, which I don't think they did here, we would have a 1 here, and a 5 here, and a 1 here, and 2 here. So it would simply become 2/5. And because it's negative times negative, it's going to be positive. So there it is. 1x equals 2/5, or simply x equals 2/5. And here's our last practice. If you feel like you understood that example above, go ahead, pause the video, and try these 4 on your own. Pause now. Okay, I hope you paused the video. Question 3a is telling us that 7 is -half of a number. Okay, so if I find the -half of a number and I get 7, that means this number must be negative, right? Because negative times negative equals positive. And I'm going to say that this number is going to be -14. And this is just me saying, because -half times -14, I'm going to get half of that number, but in positive. So it'll be 7. Now let's just try. I need to multiply both sides by the multiplicative inverse, so it's going to look like this. Sorry, -2 over 1 is our multiplicative inverse that will be multiply times the 7 that we have, right? And on this side, we have to do the same. So I will write it again as -2 over 1, right? And what we already had on there, times -1 over 2, x. Okay, I will cross-reference these, and they cancel each other out. Okay, and I'm just left with 1x, which is simply x. And on this side, I have 7 times 2. Now this 7 can be turned into a fraction simply by putting it over 1, right? All numbers are over 1. So we cross-reference, there's no cross-referencing, so it's simply, because they're both denominators are 1, I can simply multiply straight across the top, and I have -2 times 7 equals -14, as I had predicted. Okay, let's try 3b. We have 6/7 of a number equals, or 6/7 of a number is -3 over 14. Again, let's isolate our variable by getting rid of the coefficient, and the only way to do that is by multiplying it by its multiplicative inverse, and you must do that on both sides. So let's do that. We flip it, right? The multiplicative inverse, it's this fraction flipped, so it becomes 7 over 6, right? And that's going to be multiplied times 6 over 7, m, equals 7 over 6 again, times what we already had on this side, which is -3 over 14. Now we're multiplying, so let's cross-reference first. 7 cancels out 7, 6 cancels out 6, and we're left with just 1m. And on this side, cross-referencing means this 3 becomes 1, while this 6 becomes 2.
And over here the 7 becomes 1, while the 14 becomes 2. So I have across the top, I have 1 times 1 and 2 times 2. Right, 1 times 1 equals 1, and 2 times 2 equals 4. And the whole thing is negative now. Sorry for the mess, I barely squeeze it in there, but I'll put the answer here. M equals negative 1/4.
Okay, now we have 3C. Negative 9 equals 1/3 of n. So 1/3 of a number is negative 9. So I can see that this was going to be negative 27. Again, because 1/3 of a number, we're saying that this is one part of 3 parts of a number. So you'll see what I mean in a minute. So 1/3 of a number is negative 9. We have to multiply both sides by the reciprocal of this coefficient. So it'll look like this. 3/1 times 9, right? Equals 3/1 times 1/3 n. So all I did was I'm using multiplication property of equality to multiply both sides by the reciprocal. Or this is the second step in dividing, so that's why it's there. Now we can put that 9/1 to make it easy to see. 1 times 1 is 1, but 3 times negative 9 is negative 27. Equals these cancel each other out, and I'm left with 1n, or just simply n. So n equals negative 27. And finally, 3D. Okay. And what they're saying is that negative 4 is 2/7 of a number. Okay. Let's get rid of this coefficient in order to isolate the y. So let's use division property of equality, or in this case, it would be multiplication property of equality, but multiplying the reciprocal, which is the second step in dividing fractions. So it should look like this now. 7/2 times negative 1/4 equals 7/2 times 2/7y. You see, all I did was I inserted the reciprocal on both sides in order to multiply, and now we can start cross-referencing. The first side doesn't have cross-reference, but the second one does, so 2's cancel each other out, and the 7's cancel each other out, and I'm left with y. And now I have 7 times negative 1 is negative 7, and 2 times 4 equals 8. So it's negative 7/8. And that is it for today, everyone. So as you can see, here's your guided practice. Okay. And that is the lesson for today. See you next class, everyone.